All right, let's see. Oh, if only y'all could hear the music that I'm going to be jamming to while I do this. Let's see. See, the typing is a little bit loud still. Ah, fuck it. It's been a little bit of time earlier fixing the microphone. Last handful of streams have not been talking streams. So tonight, I'm going to be doing some work on the animation system. As you can see, we have animation working. However, we must go deeper. So I learned of this asset pack called Mini Fantasy dungeon. It's like an 8x8, like super low res asset collection. And I really like how it looks. He has a free for development, like, you know, trial version. And if I buy it, then I can use it commercially when I actually put the game up for sale. And I think it would be great. It would actually take a lot of anxiety off of my chest, because I've been stressing about the assets, right? Like, way unreasonably so. And anything I can do to take the burden off of having to fuck with this shit, basically, is something that I absolutely want to do. Because anything I can do to like make this shit easier, absolutely critical. So one of the realizations though about this handling of animation that I'm doing, right? One of the realizations about this animation is that the way that I'm currently doing it, we're let's see. Like the way that we're doing animation now, or sprite handling, I should call it, is that we're reading in this entire sprite sheet. We read it in as a texture first, and then using some clever math, I'm able to automatically figure out like the size of the frame for like one sprite or like one animation frame, right? So like in this case, even though the sprite is like in the 8x8 zone, he's like dead center. And I thought to myself, why is the texture arranged this way? Why is the sprite got so much padding? I've asked myself in the past, like for many years, is this something that I need to start doing? Like if I were to create my own assets? And I'm like, So let's see. Just tweaking something here. One of the things that like I want to be able to do is read in this entire thing, right? And then there's a completely separate walking animation. I haven't even loaded this one into the game yet. But for every sprite sheet that I have in the game that has animation with multiple contexts, or even with just one context, we have to define those in our textures file. So This is a similar arrangement to how I had previously. The first number is the ID of the animation. Like, or rather, the ID of the sprite. The second number is the number of contexts. The third number is the number of frames per context. So, as an example, this is 416. So, in this sheet, we have 4 contexts. The context in this case corresponds to the direction the sprite is facing. So we have bottom right, bottom left, top right, and top left. And each direction has 16 frames of animation. It's a pretty lengthy idle animation. Now, I had a realization when I saw the way that the assets were organized when I downloaded it to take a look, see how easily it would be to finagle it into my game, right? The realization is that we need a different sprite for every action that a character or thing in the game can make or take, right? So as an example here, we have 2 actions. We have idling and we have walking. So we're going to wedge walking in tonight, but we're going to do something to make it easier for the next actions to be added after walking. Because if we can get the framework here good, then in the future, you know, should I create my own assets, use someone else's asset pack, set it up so that we can switch assets in and out very easily, we'll have all of that infrastructure built. And more importantly, we'll be able to move on to fucking gameplay. Because I want this game to look really good. I don't want to rush it. But I have to be diligent. I have to take time every single day in order to push this forward. And earlier I was doing research. I realized that development of games is not strictly entirely about coding, as much as I'd like it to be. And that's probably because I've spent so much time in my life working on getting good at writing code. I'm not even that good, but I'm good enough that I can actually build something, right? Growing up, before I got a computer, I was really trying to push in the art direction. I had a desk, I did a lot of drawing, I had a lot of concept art, and when I got a computer, I was really sidetracked by that. Drawing is still very therapeutic for me, and in the future I'd like to do some drawing streams. It's been a long time since I've done that. I've never had a good digital drawing setup though, and for at least working with pixel art, my new numpad based mousing arrangement I find rather effective for, you know, minimizing stuff. Like, so we got this numpad over here, right? We got that. We got the numpad on the right, and check it out. You can see me mousing right now. So yeah, it's pretty fun. I like being able to move like a fucking robot when I'm mousing. It's so nice on the wrists. This is the future of computers. I've been seeking to get rid of the mouse for years, and this is a happy kind of, you know, halfway, in my opinion. So we have all these different animation actions we have to handle, right? So how is animation handled at the moment? Here's what a sprite object is in code. It's very basic. We have a texture, we have a vector, we have a handful of integers, and we have 2 rectangles. Very straightforward. Here's some of the setup code for actually loading a sprite into memory. At the very beginning of the game, we load all of our textures into an array. Once we have that once we have that array loaded, we can create sprites off of it, because the texture is passed in as a pointer, which in this case is essentially a reference. One of my techniques in the very beginning of making these game engines is to load all of the textures into memory so that you can have multiple sprites reference the same texture, so that you're not loading the same texture into every single sprite. This is a detail that, if you're trying to build this from scratch, could be easily overlooked, but I find it to be a very simple optimization technique. Now, before I continue, turn off preview and open up chat window. Okay. Huh. Okay, here we go. What's happening, people? How are y'all doing tonight? 1:31 in the morning Central Time. Dark Mage in the house. Let's fucking go. If only y'all could hear my music. I don't want to get fucking copy struck. It'd be nice to like be able to build a list of like music that like it is known that the copyright holder allows its use, because like I've gotten hit with those, you know. So here's what we're doing. We have multiple animations, right? We got walking and we got idling. And there's a bunch of others, but those are just the first 2 that we're going to do tonight. The system that we're going to build the next time we get to development, we're going to add in a 3rd action, and the system we're building tonight will allow us to easily add more than 2 actions into an entity like this. I don't want to say sprite anymore, because the thing that we're going to build tonight is called a sprite group, or at least that's what I'm going to call it. I'm open to better names, but essentially it's like perhaps even a list or a map, a sprite map. But essentially, it's just going to be like a way for us to have more than one sprite on a single object. So in this case, the object is the player, right? So we've got our dude chilling in this flatland dungeon that I'm able to totally walk outside of. We're still a bit of a ways from being able to handle proper, what you would call collision detection, although collision detection is not the right term that we should be using for that. What it's really is that instead of like hard moving the sprite when we're pressing up, down, left, right, what we want to do is we want to create an event. And that event is going to be of like type dungeon move, and depending on which direction you hit on your keyboard, it's going to create a vector representing that direction and distance. That event is going to get thrown into a processor along with events that could be generated by every other NPC in the dungeon, perhaps even other players in the future. And once like the event list for a given turn is like calculated, we're going to need to run through that list, right? Because like essentially each like action or like each entity that's going to be generating actions they have to go in a certain order. You're gonna have like think in terms of Dungeons and Dragons. They're gonna have to have like a priority or a an initiative roll to indicate like what the turn order is going to be for that turn. Because every turn order could be different. And in the processing of events, an entity that acts before another entity could totally mess up someone's action. So like for instance, a wizard attempting to cast a spell that takes like multiple turns, for instance, gets hit by another player or another NPC. And the first time they get hit, nothing happens and they're able to continue concentrating on their spell. But then the second time, they get lucky and the hit knocks the wizard's concentration out. And so they have to like start casting the spell all over again. So the system that's like an entirely separate system from what we're building tonight, but I'm like trying to explain why moving outside a dungeon can't be handled with simple collision detection. We have to integrate a system that handles every type of action in the dungeon, and we'll start with movement, right? But like eventually we'll move on to like being able to pick up items, being able to put torches down like we were doing before. In fact, we can still have that system here. So there's a good chance I'm going to pay for this asset pack. They really like it. Not just this one, but also like the big pack. Like the dude's got like 49 something additional like expansion asset packs. So there's potentially a lot of shit that we're going to be able to put into this game. I'm going to start off with like the basic stuff here because I'm thinking the first game, like the first real thing that we're going to be targeting is not like full-blown ass dungeons so much as like micro dungeons, right? Like I want bite-sized dungeon crawling. It's very thoughtful, can be played at 5 minutes at a clip, and could be potentially played for, you know, like much longer than that if you get into a really good flow. NetHack is like in the right direction, right? So let's see. So we want to move on to this idea of a sprite group or a sprite map. Because an entity will have a group of sprites. I think that's the easiest way to talk about it. Sprite group count. We also want to point to like a current sprite, right? I guess size is a better name for it. Why do we want to return a pointer for this one? All right. Okay. Okay, so Here's how this is gonna work. When we're creating the sprite group, in general, we're really never gonna remove an animation. Now, to set up some debugging stuff, here we go. All right, so we have our new object that's going to wrap around our sprites. Now, here's a problem here. We don't want to necessarily add. We do want to set. So in the very beginning, oh yeah, and we don't have a way to like expand capacity either. So we have to know the maximum number of sprites that we want to add to a group when we create it. So in the very beginning, we're going to start with 1, then we'll do 2, and then next time we'll do 3. I think that works. Just trying to think through everything before I actually... So we have a sprite group. I don't think I'm even using compsci at the moment, but I'm going to leave that in there. All right, so I haven't even done anything yet, right? All right, so we've got a sprite group object in the game now, right? And just like previously, I've got it set up so that, I actually started running this over 30 minutes ago. So we are over 100,000 frame count draws into the game right now. It's been running this whole time. And when I recompiled it, it picked up the changes and reloaded them into the game. So now the game has this new object that I've created, sprite group, right? So when we go to create a sprite group, we do this. And actually, we are going to have to, we are going to have to, well, maybe, no. All right, so here's sprite, and here's sprite group. We're not using it yet, but we will in a moment. So here we have our basic hero, and now I realize, and it'll probably become more apparent how this should really be handled over time, but for right now I'm doing it the way I'm doing it, and it'll be marginally easier, and we'll probably find another way to make it marginally easier yet again. But at the moment, what I'm doing, actually render everything, so we've got this sprite, and beneath them is a shadow, right? We have this complete sheet just for the shadow. Like they separated out the shadow, which is probably very smart. I decided to get it to actually render in the game, to create two sprites, one for the hero and one for the shadow. So in this case, what we would have to do is create two sprite groups. And actually, we want that to be a pointer. And we want to do a sprite group hero shadow group. So we're going to implement this side by side with the running code. And then once it's implemented, comment out the old code. And at that point, the switchover will be complete, and we'll be able to do the next step. But as I forgot, we are going to have to instead of sprite group add, I want to do a sprite group set. because each action, each animation is going to have a key, and that key is going to be an integer. That's our index. So the idle animation will be 0, and the walking animation will be 1, right? Actually, I realize I'm probably too low on the screen for y'all to see. There you go. Uh-oh. It crashed. So I think, like, yeah, if you add a new function to an object that's like used by a libgame, then libgame freaks out because it's expecting, I guess, things to be in the same locations. If you change if you change just a function, the hot reload works pretty well. But you can't like just arbitrarily add new functions and stuff and expect everything to still play nice. But once you write that new function and you rerun the, everything is good. So there's a little nuances to the whole process. I think it makes for kind of a nice streaming setup, to be honest. I always like the idea of like being able to summon things by casting spells. And in this case, the keyboard being my instrument, my wand of sorts. I know that's cheesy. I don't care. Now, we could also just be careful to add things in a certain order. And so long as you add the sprites in the correct order, we don't have to think too hard. But we also do need a, well, so when we go to access it, it'll be something like sprite group pointing to sprites, and then key, and then that'll get us the sprite that we want, and then we can do whatever we need to at that point, usually just like a draw. So we have our sprite group and we have to create it. So here we actually create our two sprites. So we're going to do this right next to this. I believe that's correct. Yeah. So in the very beginning, we're only going to have literally one sprite group. or to, and we might even be able to wrap the shadow up. So like if we do it like idle shadow, walking shadow, then we can actually wrap everything up into a single group. And that should still work. So okay. So this is how we would add our two sprites, the hero and the shadow, to what I'm calling a sprite group, which is basically just a way for us to wrap this and this. And pretty soon we're going to have this too. So we're going to start with this though, which means any place where, oh, and actually at the very end, and we never destroyed the other sprite. So you have to make sure that we destroy the sprite group. Now, where we're actually calling the hero and the hero shadow is in draw gameplay scene. And of course, this needs some cleanup. I need like an actual sprite draw function and like a texture draw. So the big deal here so instead of drawing so yeah, the sprite doesn't have the texture stored on it at the moment. Or does it? It is. So actually, and this is going to change twice. So really what I should be doing down here, I'm surprised I missed this detail. Instead of pulling texture info text hero.texture, hero pointing to texture, Same thing here. And as you can see, it still works. It still runs. It has the same effect. And we're going to do this the second time. So instead of using the hero and the hero shatter, instead of using the hero and the hero shadow, we're going to use the sprite group. So this would be hero group pointing to sprites of 0, pointing to texture, and we have to dereference the whole thing. Now, accessing this is fucking awful, right? So this is hero group pointing to sprites of 0, pointing to source, all right, so there's our call to draw it from the group, right? So all we would have to do to get the hero shadow is copy this line, or these lines rather, paste, and change the 0 to 1. Now, when I save this, the game is gonna close the window, reload everything, and then open the window again, assuming it doesn't crash. And I was wrong. Double free detected. Oh, fuck. Oh, yeah, that's because of the thing down here, yeah. I forgot to change this. So, because we're no longer using these, is when we go to destroy the sprites, we have to free them only once. So that was a literal double free. That's the exact same bug that caused Heartbleed. And I actually said to myself, you know, I gotta remember to come back down here and comment those out. So now, when we're creating these sprites, we no longer need the globals. So we can actually make these local. And up top, we no longer need these. So at the moment, because of the way that I'm handling stuff in the input controls, we're gonna have to change this too. in order for the movement to still work. So this is now hero group pointing to sprites of 0. Oh, we forgot to, the shadow's not animating either. So we got to increment that too. All right. Everything compiles. That's good. All right. As you can see, everything still works perfectly, right? Now, here's the kicker. We're hard coding in which action, which animation to display first. But the sprite group has a current value on it, right? Right there. Oh, that's weird. It never initialized current. Because current is needed, right? We need current for keeping track of like which context we're currently in, like which action we want to animate. So over in libgame, back in our draw gameplay scene, yeah, like we're hard coding into 0 and the 1 here. So like if we operate under the assumption that, like for instance, in this case, current is 0, so the shadow for current will always be at current plus 1. So if we store things this way, we have to do it this way the whole time. So every sprite, every animation will also need a corresponding shadow. Now, I'm already thinking it might be possible for me to write like a shadow generation tool that would allow me to not even have to have a whole ass fucking separate ass asset. Like literally these look like the same thing over and over again. Like they're not even animating. But I think they did it this way to allow for it to be animatable. So, you know, I could be wrong. But this can't be 0. This has to be hero group pointing to current. This can't be 1. This has to be hero group pointing to current plus 1. Now here we go. All right. Everything loaded. It's still good. What's the next thing here? I started off saying I wanted to finish off tonight by getting the walking in there, right? Human walk. Now, did I copy over the walking shadow? I did. Okay. Now, over in textures, this is going to be walk. Going to be walk. Now, the numbers here are going to be different, though. One, two, three, four. 4x4. All right, so we load in the hero, we load in the shadow. Those are over in libgamedefines. All right, so this should attach the new animation, right? Now, if we wanted to cheat and just see like if the walking animation would start right here. Now, we would not be able to set 1. That would make it look weird, right? That definitely breaks stuff. But if we set it to 2, uh-oh. That's probably because the asset file is not existing yet. Uh-oh. Something's not working here. Oh. And yeah, this is we're gonna want to have a destination on the hero group. Because we don't want to hard code this in. Although we could just use current. Problem is when the animation context changes. Oh, load textures. Let's see. Uh, 4 and 5, right? Yeah. Oh no, this should also be. This should be 4, and this should be 4. Oops. Okay, so we need to add something to the debug panel to kind of figure this out. Okay, so 0, 1. Crashed. Nice. Whoa. All right, so we should get the size and capacity. Yeah, y'all can still see my hands pretty good. Hmm. Oh shit. That's a giant fucking roach. Jesus Christ. Fucking wings and shit, man. Need something that's gonna kill him in one. Alright, we got him. Okay. I'm on some fucking Asmon gold level, Jesus Christ. Swear to God, they're not my roaches. Alright. What was I doing? So whenever we add a sprite to the sprite group, we increment the size Now, when we create the sprite group with 5, we actually go ahead and malloc for more sprites than we need. But see, this should actually be destroying up to capacity. Oh, C is for control mode still? Oh, I never saved this. Wait a second. All right, so it picks up that we add the 4. Oh, wait. This is wrong. We should have done this before. So this goes up here. So we can actually get away with actually using the same rectangle for both of these. And then we can do the same thing for the other 2. And now when we add them to the sprite group, okay, so we would have to update all of the, like I was saying earlier, we're going to have a destination on the hero group, right? So we're going to have to hard specify the the destination of the sprite group. So if we manage it through that destination instead of these, then when we go to like handle our input, we no longer have to do this. Instead, now all we have to do is this. But there's a catch. Now that we change it here and here, we're also going to have to change it where we draw, right? So here we're supposed to be drawing the sprite, but for some reason the texture is not correctly updating. So this is how we get the texture, and this is how we get the source rectangle of that texture, of that sprite rather. Because the source is going to change depending on which frame of animation you're on, but the destination is where it actually appears on screen. That rectangle is now stored on the group itself. Same thing down here. So we no longer have to be referring to the destination through the sprite itself, because that is wrapped around the meta object that represents the group of sprites. Now this one, same deal. Now, what's curious about this human walk. Did I not change the human walk? Walk shadow. Idle. Idle shadow. I mean, I could tell it's not updating. Now he's not even animating, right? Why the hell? Oh, it's because we're not incrementing the... That's okay. So we would have to increment the animation on every animation or on every sprite in that group, right? Oh, so it crashed when we were destroying the sprite group. That's interesting. There's probably some issue there. All right, let's zoom in. Moment of truth. Oh shit, yeah. Now, here's a trick that we need to. Actually, I can see that the shadow is animating, so one of the things probably last thing for tonight, maybe. Is we want to be able to correct the direction that they're facing, right? Now that was a sprite destroy, sprite group destroy. Oh, it does need to be size. Or rather, I guess, do we need to actually free sprites at this point? Like, if we destroyed all of the sprites in that's a good question. I guess technically we wouldn't have to do this, right? Oh no. Maybe this does need to be size. Okay, good. Okay, so we fixed that crash. The animations are working now. And we want to update the direction that the sprite is facing whenever you're moving around. So like remember that sprites have a current context? So the current context specifies which row of a sprite sheet that we're currently animating. So facing bottom right, or right in general, is the top row. Facing bottom left or left in general is the second. Top right is 3 and top left is 4. So that's right. That's left. So when you press, like, let's say up, for instance, right? Let's say you start off in context 0, which is facing right. You press up. We want you to be facing top right. Then this handles that. Now, I think this might be better handled as a switch. So we're going to switch on this. So for case 1, you're facing bottom left. Then we want you to be facing top right or top left. If you're facing top right already, we want you to stay in the top right. And if you're facing top left, we want you to be facing top left. Similarly, for down, if you were already facing down right, we want you to stay that way, and the same thing if you're down left. If you were up right, then we want you to be facing down right, and if you were up left, we want you to be facing down left. I'm not sure it's actually updating the animation context now that I see this. Um, yeah, it's actually not updating the animation context. Oh, that's because we have to call increment context. Because this actually updates the Y. Okay, well, that's good. And actually, we don't want to just increment the context. No, 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 no. Yes. Okay. So when you hit right, I actually want it. Yeah, so we have to do it up there too. Okay, that feels pretty good. That looks very good. Oh man, yes. That's so good. All right, so that's 1x resolution. It's so small y'all can't even see it. There's 2, 3, 4. Oh shit. So we need to make sure to copy the context over for every sprite in the sprite group. So really what we're going to want here is a set contexts plural. Sprite group set contexts. I think after this will be the last thing for tonight. All right. All right. I feel pretty satisfied with this. This is exactly what I set out to do tonight. I had the revelation earlier, and it was like, in that moment, I knew exactly what I had to do. I had to create a sprite group. This is what a sprite group is. It's a double pointer to sprites with a current, a capacity, and a size, and a destination. Now, the way I think it's going to work in the game when time comes is like, if you had just recently walked, like if your last turn you walked into another tile like I just did, then I'm going to leave the sprite animating with the previous action, right? Or perhaps not. Perhaps the walk will only occur like smoothly, because one thing that I really like, this is a detail that I'm like, I really want, and it's going to take time to perfect, but I feel like it would be worth it. This whole idea that we would be able to smoothly move the sprite from one tile to another. At the moment, it's just like a hard jump, right? So before we can even think about doing that smooth movement, though, I have to have that event processing system in place that I was talking about earlier. So what would happen is, as each move is getting processed, so like for instance, let's say I want to move to the right, so that would be a vector of +1 and 0, right? So I'd end up moving like that. So in order for me to smoothly do the move, it would be like if this were like a platformer, or some other type of game, I'd be able to handle this more on a physics of the frame by frame moment perspective. But because we have this meta idea of like a dungeon management system where every turn a list of actions gets generated by all the entities in the dungeon, and we have to step through each of these events and process them in order. And when we get to the player and one of those moves or one of those actions is a move, essentially we want to like lock everything else in the dungeon from being able to move, or like any handling of any other events to halt before the move has completed, right? Because you could just instantaneously take the entity, plop him in the new position in the dungeon, and then immediately update the sprite's drawing destination, right? But the drawing destination is based upon which tile in the dungeon you're currently located on, right? So if you're moving from one tile into another, and that tile is, in this case, like 8 pixels away, right? Like if you're measuring from the top left of each tile and you're moving to the next top left of the next tile and it's 8 pixels away, then like I'm currently doing is I'm hard updating the sprite destination by literally just adding 8 to it, right? But this is a bit of a hack. The whole reason we need the dungeon management system is to be able to facilitate this kind of smooth movement, among other things. The smooth movement that we want, instead of this hard jump, would be more of a pixel by pixel smooth transfer from this tile to the other. Like, we could probably ghetto rig something to demonstrate this like right now without actually having the full system in place. So here we're like literally adding and subtracting to the base for left and right, right? But this is for demo purposes, right? So if is key down, and instead of moving the base, we're gonna move 1. And we'll just do it for left and right. I'm not gonna do up and down. One of the nice things about this hot reload system is how quickly I can make these little changes and have them immediately reflect. All right. Oh, that's pretty fast, you know? Destination. Isn't rectangle float or isn't rectangles stuff floats? Oh man, this would be so nice. Yeah, okay. Okay. So you see that, right? Like, okay, so yeah, up and down, we should also do this little test for, right? Now I can see many different types of dungeon crawling systems coming out of this setup. The first one that I want to do is really turn-based. So when I say like player chooses to move left, then here's 1 turn, right? Like we can even change the speed a little bit, or here we go. All right, so this would be essentially 1 turn, 1 turn, 1 turn, 1 turn. So in order to do this, right, in order to make such a thing in my system, because ultimately, and wow, I think I just got raided. Hello. I don't know why my browser, oh man, I didn't even have this thing up the whole time. Jesus. I could have been getting follow notifications. Damn. What's good, everybody? So, I'm trying to explain what I want this movement to look like once I've integrated this future system that I'm going to be building in a couple sessions. The whole idea here is that we want smooth movement, turn to turn. So if the player chooses to move right, then his move is one of many different actions that are being taken by other entities in the dungeon. So let's say you happen to get lucky and you're the first thing to move in the dungeon on that turn. So that would look like that. So then every other entity would make its turn, right? And one design decision is whether or not the player always gets to move first. I think that's how Sheeran works, right? And I think that's also how NetHack works. But we have a choice between that or actually implementing more D&D style mechanics where every turn, every creature involved in the dungeon gets to take a initiative. Conflicts get resolved and turn order gets processed. Each thing does its action. And actually, the events may not be even generated until that. So we'd have like an initiative list, which would be a list of like entity IDs and what they're in the order that their initiative should be. So every entity would have an opportunity to, given the current state of the dungeon, make an action. And then we get to the player gets to make an action, it gets processed. So anytime a entity takes an action and it gets processed, that includes the animation. So if that's a move, it would look like that. I know this sounds really pedantic and basic, but it's such an important detail because everything is going to be centered around it. So this looks good. This feels good. I've gotten stuff done tonight. I can't complain. I'm fucking jacked up on coffee though. And it's 2 a.m. and I want to cuddle with my dog. He's passed out. I've been live for 2 hours. Nobody's really chatting either. I appreciate the views, really. I should really hang out for a while now that I've got your eyeballs on me, huh? Where are y'all coming from right now? Speak up. Chat. We are jamming to some music, but y'all cannot hear it. Yeah, I changed servers on OBS recently, and the stream quality has gone up significantly. I've also gotten a lot of new subs in the last couple of weeks. Like, I'm averaging something like 10 plus a day now. Just crazy. I figure so long as I keep up these efforts and I try to make a good ebb and flow, like, I think it's insane that some of these people stream for as long as they do. I find that I have to take regular breaks, and like about 2 hours is like my sweet spot for actually getting things done and being productive while also not burning myself out. What I find is that it's really hard and also not necessarily the commonplace in a corporate environment to be programming all 8 hours of your workday. Were I in a spot, like for instance, because I have an elderly senior dog that I care for, I have to take breaks to make sure that she can get out to potty and get some water and stuff like that. But even if I didn't have that obligation, I would still have to take a break to eat or get food, take a piss, get drinks, stretch, especially. In the future, I'd like to afford a expensive chair that would help alleviate a lot of my back and body pain. I feel like the desk that I have is in the right direction. In an ideal environment, I have a much bigger space where my hands can kind of really fly out and not worry about having to hit something that's on my desk. When I'm really in the flow of things, my hands are flying, and I'm not always necessarily aware of where they're flying to. So if I'm calling it a night, then we have to do our final stuff for the evening. So what is that? We have to take a look at what we've done in this session. We created sprite groups. We replaced how we're currently handling animating the sprite by swapping out the old sprite pointers with a new sprite group. Greetings from Poland. Nice to see you. Okay, so we have to add our stuff to the commit. We have to commit. And that's it. I actually did not make a separate branch for this, which is not the best practice, but 308 insertions, 30 deletions tonight. So let's see what our current stats are. So the stats are my attempt to do statistical analysis on my programming efforts. The first script that I ran builds a fresh copy of the game, and then takes some stats on it. It finds out how big the executable is, as well as how big the size of the libgame library is, because it is through libgame.so that all of the hot code reload actually works. So it is really not the size of the executable that matters as much. As you can see, the size of the executable has not changed in 5 days. I've done some work since then. But the size of libgame, because of all the objects being integrated into it, essentially this is where all the real code lives. It's a little bit over 1 megabytes, like 1.3. And we have lines of code count that's slowly growing. We started off at 995 about a week ago. Now we're up to 1624. And I'm sure there's opportunities for cleanup. Every so often, when there is cleanup that results in a reduction of lines, over here on the lines of code per second, we'll find a negative value. In the cases where we have negative values, this is a code reduction. So for instance, on 9/19 at 9:52 p.m., I had 1451 lines. And then about, a little bit less than 20 minutes later, I got 1438. Usually this results from refactoring or good reorganization, because oftentimes what I do when I'm trying to get something working right for the first time is I'll step through the processes necessary to actually make the thing work and do what I want it to do. And then I go back and I try to, over time, and if possible in that moment, clean it up and wrap things together in a way so that, like, for instance, if it takes me 20 lines to do something like pull a texture out and draw it on the screen, then I try to find a way to consolidate that. So, like, if I can wrap stuff up into functions, then I do that. And there's a lot of opportunity still in libgame for me to wrap things into functions. I try to separate out refactoring from actually getting things done, because getting things done is hard and you don't want to go back and forth between those two rapidly. So now that we have this new thing built, it's a great opportunity for me to go back and refactor. I'm not doing that right now, though. That's going to be later. It's definitely time for me to think about shutting things down and getting ready for bed. I appreciate everyone joining, though. I wish I could get on earlier in the day. I find it takes me a long time to really get booted up, but timing is everything. So I've got a pretty cool closeout thing here for us. To be continued. I hope you enjoyed. I hope everyone has a great day, a great night, no matter what part of the world you're in. I hope that you are having fun and creating things and doing things interesting. And I hope you're doing it with cool people and that you have a good support network and that people got your back. And if you have any questions, if you're a programmer, if you're a computer science student especially, most of my experience tutoring people is with students, but I have tutored professionals as well. I am totally able to take new clients. So if you're interested in pair programming, getting some sort of help with a project that you're working on, you can reach out to me either by messaging me on here on Twitch, or you can reach out to me on Twitter/X at evildojo666. Until next time, everyone. It's been real. Take it easy. Peace and good night.